Warning: this video contains strong opinions that some might find controversial. If you are easily offended, please stop watching. Hello everyone, my name is ZerkMonsterHunter 4. And today we're going to be tackling a video that really goes off of a very sensitive subject within the Fire Emblem community. And that is the great censorship debate. Now, before you hold your pitchforks and torches at the ready, I'm gonna say this. A lot of people have been going off about how censorship ruined Fire Emblem Fates, like the Soleil controversy, the removal of skinship or whatever, and the fact that we got no dual audio, and people are crying foul and saying that this is what ruined Fire Emblem Fates. And to me, this is a really incorrect, naive, and reactionary observation. Now, as a quick disclaimer, I don't want to say that I'm condoning censorship. In fact, I'm wholly against censorship in media. Because, you know what? If anyone was trying to publish a novel, and they told me that I couldn't include X, Y, and Z because it wasn't culturally appropriate for the area I wanted to publish in, I'd kindly tell them to fuck off. There is only one case of the entire localization debacle surrounding Fire Emblem Fates where I actually feel that anything that the Treehouse did was completely justified, but we'll get to that a bit later. Now, again, I'm not condoning censorship. It's bad. It's usually a dumb idea, especially in video games where cultural values are different depending on the region, and they should be preserved in order to, well, be culturally diverse. We don't need all of this censorship and safe space crap. Okay, so the argument that I'm trying to make is that Fire Emblem Fates was not ruined by anything that the localization did. It's not a bad game because it was censored. Fire Emblem Fates is a bad game because it's a bad game. Now, I know that might be a little hard for you to believe and a little weird coming out of me, especially someone who basically made his entire YouTube channel off of bashing Fates. But, you see, Fates was broken before it even hit Western shores. And no amount of translation errors, bad localization, or anything could have done any worse than the fact that the Japanese version already had Corrin being a total dumbass, terrible villains, and a huge inconsistency in tone. All things that make any narrative completely terrible. So, I ask you, if the Japanese version had all of that, everything that was a main complaint regarding Fates, is it really the more superior version? So, with that all being said, today, I'll be showing you exactly why the Japanese version isn't any better than the English version, and I'll also be debunking probably one of the biggest controversies among Fates' censorship, which is of course the whole dual audio question. So hold on to your asses and please hear me out before you slam on that dislike bar. This is gonna be a big one. So, with this attitude created about how localization completely ruined Fates' rating, I'd say it's possibly incorrect, because the story is still overall the same decisions are completely made.
It's not like that really dumb plot twist and revelation with Anthony and everything happens only in the English version.
No, that happens in the Japanese version as well, and it's still just as dumb. Look, honestly, if you're going to complain about how bad the writing is in the English version, at least look at how bad the plot structure was in the original version. Because, I don't know if you were blinded by your pure weebery, but the Japanese version, it's the same game, it's the same plot. The only difference is that there's no dank memes in it. And that's really it. Yeah, the writing was toned down a bit for childlike audiences, and when I see shit like this, how they changed Elise's age, I get a little pissed off myself, I agree. But you know what, that's because I can actually handle medieval things like Game of Thrones. I don't know, pick up a frickin' book. Oh man, I'm gonna get so many hate comments. Now, Fire Emblem Fates' translation area missteps are completely well documented, and a simple Google image search will result you with a lot of examples of things. Now, there are some cases where I feel like, well, they actually did a decent job, such as this conversation on screen right now with Garen. It actually expands the dialogue and explains a bit more. I honestly don't see what the problem with this specific translation is at all. That being said, the ridiculous outcry that people gave was absolutely enormous. Everybody and their mother covered the Fire Emblem Fates censorship debate. Even this asshole covered the Fire Emblem censorship debate. Now, I think back to the original Japanese My Castle trailer, and when it was released on Game Explain's channel. In the comments, after the face-touching thing was finally released, about 90% of the comments about face-touching were like, it's kind of weird and creepy. Nobody was really quite on board with it. And from what I hear, a lot of the Japanese players weren't quite on board with it either. So why was there a giant outcry when it was removed, other than the simple fact that it got censored? Now, again, I don't condone destroying somebody's art like this. Like, if they wanted that in the game, by all means keep that in the game for the creator's sake. But it's an optional feature in a strategy RPG game. This is a fucking strategy RPG game, not a goddamn visual novel. All the more reason that I love classic Fire Emblem, and that's sad because I got into the series with Awakening. Like, seriously, by all means, I'm part of the weeb side of the Fire Emblem fanbase. Like, if you're being really technical, I am arguably one of them. So yeah, the Japanese version might have had a lot of altered lines, and the script might be slightly different at its base. But a lot of that's really only surrounding a lot of the child units and a lot of the support conversations. And while shit like Baruka and What's-His-Face's supports completely piss me off personally, it's really mostly surrounding optional features. A lot of the main game's story and dialogue is actually very well preserved, meaning that a lot of the optional dialogue is more contained, and it's not important in the grand scheme of things. Now, it is a shame that it got changed or altered at all, completely. I totally see where the arguments are coming from. But when it comes to an optional feature, does it really affect the main game that much? And with that being said, does that make the game worse because of it? No, I don't think it doesn't. Because when it comes down to it, if the main story is relatively untouched, I'm sorry, but Fate still has a really terrible narrative. Now, I haven't played the translation patch that a few fans made myself, but I did watch Rasuli play's LP of it. Of course, after I played Fates for myself because I wanted to avoid spoilers. And while watching it, there really wasn't much different. Like, yeah, there were a lot of lines that were pretty different, but the story was still completely intact. So, I'd ask you, if anyone out there has played the translation patch, please tell me if any story beats of how idiot Corrin became are present in the Japanese version, or if they are made better in the Japanese version. Because if that is the case, I will revoke this argument. But until then, until someone comes forward and says, oh, well, when X happened, Corrin did Y, which is the opposite of what he did in the Western version, which actually makes more sense from a character standpoint, perfectly fine. I will completely see your argument if that is the case. But until then, I completely stand by my argument saying that so long as the main story was completely intact during localization, which it pretty much is, Fates is still a bad game, no matter what country you live in. So, now that I've pissed off the entire half of the people who are watching this video, how about I piss off the other half? Now, the dual audio question was something that was surrounding Fates since it was revealed that Fates was not going to have dual audio in its English release. Now, at first you think, well, Outcry, frickin' Awakening had dual audio, why does Fates not have it? Well, there's actually a good reason, and one that I feel is completely justified, and one that I completely get. Now, before you say, well, oh, it's just more Treehouse BS. Actually, no. You see, funnily enough, the reason that dual audio doesn't exist in Fates is because of, by all things, the most famous song to come out of Fates, which is Lost in Thoughts All Alone. You see, my information on this is a little shaky, but several places have reported this, and I've seen it a lot in the comments too, is basically what happened. The singer that Nintendo got to do Lost in Thoughts All Alone for the Japanese version eventually decided that around the game's release that she would put the song on her record label and distribute it on Japan's pop charts. Now, Nintendo, looking for this awesome advertising opportunity, looked at it and said, oh, well, yeah, sure, of course we can do that. So, they allowed her to get distribution rights on it. Now, in doing this, Nintendo actually lost the distribution rights of the song in outside areas, because now any localized version of Lost in Thoughts All Alone, sung by that Japanese vocalist, had to go through the record label. And if the record label didn't want to publish it in a certain country, they couldn't distribute it. Otherwise, they'd get sued. What this means is, unless Nintendo wanted to go to court, there was no way for the Japanese version of Lost in Thoughts All Alone to get outside of Japan. This is why we only got the English version of the song in Smash Bros. As well. Because Nintendo doesn't own the distribution rights to the Japanese one outside of Japan. Now, I'm no lawyer or journalist or anything, but you know what? I think a giant lawsuit controversy is a damn good reason why you shouldn't do dual audio. Because while Nintendo could have hired another singer, there could have possibly been some sort of controversy surrounding possibly the lyrics of the song itself, or just the song itself that the record label also owns. So, if that was the case, I can wholeheartedly see why Nintendo opted out of doing dual audio. Because if they couldn't hire another singer and they couldn't distribute the song, they'd have the song just randomly in English the first time that you heard it. So, there's my argument. And I think it's a pretty good one. That because Nintendo didn't have the distribution rights, they couldn't have dual audio. It's not censorship, it's legal trouble. And while other myths about Fire Emblem Fates' localization I can't debunk so easily, and the less I say about the Soleil controversy, the better, at least this one is actually justified. That's really all I can say about this topic, so thank you for watching, and I sincerely hope you can support this video rather than completely hate on it, because this is a topic that really gets my blood boiling, so thank you for watching. Now, before I leave, a quick suggestion to the developers and the localizers of the next Fire Emblem game. From Software's Dark Souls and Bloodborne series, it takes place in a fictionalized version of Europe in both games, being medieval Europe and Gothic Europe respectively. So, From Software decided that even in the Japanese version, they would still record English voice actors to make the immersion better. And how cool would it have been if all the Nor characters only ever spoke English in both versions, and all the Hoshido characters only spoke Japanese? Just something to think about. I'm gonna get so many goddamn hate comments for this.